Good morning, Bill.
Good morning,
How
Bill.
are you, man?
Good.
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 You sure?
Yeah, my neck hurts a little bit. That was a
Oh,
hesitation.
oh, man, that's a bummer. Sorry to hear that, buddy.
Yeah.
Bad sleep?
It's just one of those things I think where once you injure something like a neck, it can be tough to like a long recovery, not just week it's done, you're good.
Yeah.
So, I think it's one of those
Okay.
certain days.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry to hear that, though. That sucks.
Yeah. Good. I'll probably hit the chiropractor again next week.
Nice. So, how'd yesterday go? How was your Thursday?
It was good. It was good. It ended up being good. It was full. It wasn't super stressful, but I definitely had to press, pretty hard to make sure everything got done. But it wasn't overwhelming. So, what about you?
Were you done at 4?
Like 4:05. Yeah.
4 or 5? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yesterday was good. Had a really interesting interview with this closer guy for my client, and we decided that he wasn't a good fit. But it was just really interesting because this guy was a cool guy, but just not the right fit for the role that I'm trying to hire for. But had a really outstanding attitude and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that in the future there's another opportunity that I can bring him in on. I got told no on a deal yesterday, which is kind of a bummer because I thought I had it in the bag, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But some lessons learned from that, and I'll talk about that in a second.
Cool.
And I was done at 4, and yeah, man, it's been a whirlwind of a week. We're going to the zoo today, so I'll be out. Good morning, Mike. So I'll be out pretty much all day after this. I've got about an hour. So I've already started writing the other content chapter for the course. I'm about halfway through that, and then I need to write my Sherpa, and then I'm done for the week. So I'll have that done, and then in the hour or so after we're done today with this to get that done and be done with the bet for the week.
Cool. All right. Let me see. Let me show you this real quick. So 11,000 total results, 3,500 posted in the last 30 days of people in Texas with about like a 10 to 200 count who are executive level, director, owner, partner, senior, with the keyword cause somewhere in their profile.
Dang! Hold on. You got to back up. You didn't tell me you were going over your Come on, man.
I told her I had to show my work to prove that I had done it. So I had to pay for Sales Navigator again because it had expired, which is fine because it's worth it if you use it.
Yes.
And getting those, I forget that you can't export. I had been doing some test stuff with it because they let you do some freebie stuff. But yeah, I'm looking right now. What I'm looking to do is actually filter that even further down because that's 3,500 people who pretty much fit my criteria on a broad, like pretty specific, but broad enough that I want to even narrow that down more. So I'm going to look for some different ways to do that. So anyway, so that's done. That was my big bill bet with all potential podcast guests and potential asks into my group. So I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy.
That's huge, man. Good for you.
Yeah.
I know you were not looking forward to building the list, and I'm just like, build the list.
Absolutely true.
Man, it's crazy how because like it just seems so effortless. I'm like, Jake, why would you not just do this thing immediately? Like it's going to come and reinforce how big the market is and everything else like this. And we're so entrenched in like the things that like drive us that it's sometimes very hard to understand that like other people aren't wired the same way, right? And like this is all I do all day, every day, and I'm still blown away by the fact that like Jake struggles with wanting to build a list when I'll build the list before I'll do anything else.
Right. No, give me all that stuff. Give me the list builder.
Yeah. Excuse me. Dude,
Yeah,
congratulations. So what do you have today?
so today I gotta write my newsletter, my Focus Friday.
Yeah.
'Cause I didn't get it done, so I gotta get that done today and out. And then I've got some more editing to do for a different client on video stuff today. And then I've got let's see, I've got some list mining to do.
Yes, you do, my friend.
That's on the list, so maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
And then let's see, a bunch of blocking and tackling stuff, just stuff I gotta reach out, people I gotta reach out to, a social media vendor I'm trying to connect with, some different things like that.
Nice.
But I'll be done by 4.
Good. I'll be done a little before 4.
Yeah. Good for you though. I'm jealous. I wish I was in your shoes today because I love the zoo.
I love the zoo. We haven't been in a hot minute, and we definitely haven't been since the COVID thing. So I'm curious to see how it all works out and stuff like that. So,
so you get your friend's niece, right?
Yeah, Michelle's daughter is coming with us.
Daughter, that's right.
Yeah. So.
And that's it. Michelle and Michelle's daughter.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, Michelle lives in Tennessee. Her daughter's here because they have a bunch of family here and stuff like that. So we get to hang out with her. And yeah, I'm super stoked. It's weird because all week I felt like I haven't had enough time to get everything done and be more or less off today, right? And I have a very hard time planning to take a day off. Like I can burn a day really, really easily, but planning in advance to take a day off feels like I'm cheating, right? Like, and it's so weird because it's just a matter of intention, right? Like,
yeah.
Like I don't beat myself up whenever I look up and it's 4:00 and I haven't been as productive as I want, and I've been too attached to social media and doing all the social selling stuff that I do, but like planning to take a day off, it's a weird dichotomy in my head. I need to work through that.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of people that struggle with that. I have a different battle. I used to have the exact same battle, like taking days off, and now I don't have as much of a problem of taking a day off. I do have a bigger problem taking multiple days off now, though.
Okay.
So like a day off, I can count off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, yeah, I can do one day. That's not a big deal. I can do one day. Because I think though in my mind though, it's like I can make up a day's worth of miss. Mm-hmm. Whereas like if I were to go on a week's vacation, I'd be like, wow. So
it's so funny. Alice the other day was like, when is mom going to be done? Because like Melissa had done some stuff in the afternoon, so like she was working in the early evening, and I was like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, God, like why can't she just like stop for the day and pick it up tomorrow? And I'm like, well, because she wants to do it today.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, well, but it's just work. And I was like, well, this isn't how it should be viewed, but this is how it is viewed. Like if we don't do it, it doesn't get done. So it's not like we're just working for the sake of working. Like we have projects. Yeah, exactly. We have projects, that we're working towards. Like everything we do in small business is a project, and you're the only person who's doing it until you pay somebody else to do it. So, trying to explain that concept to Alice was, it didn't go anywhere. But
the most convicting statement for me around kids, I've decided this is it, is do as I say, not as I do. And you're talking about convicting. Holy cow. And when I say that, I'm like, I'm a horrible person. I just told my kid to ignore my parenting.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not good enough for you to lead or to lead by my example. So, which is just another way of exactly saying that we judge everybody else by their actions and ourselves by our intentions.
Exactly.
Right. It's terrible in any context, right? If you're holding other people to standards you are not living up to yourself, you are a hypocrite. Like, and that's a heavy word, but that's the deal. If you're what?
It's the definition. It's true.
Yeah, it is. But
most people feel about accountability. It's like, you want to do what? Keep me accountable? Like, what? You my dad? You my mom?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so funny because like some people will be like, yeah, I mean to do that, but I didn't really mean to. and that'll be okay. But then I'm like, but you expect that of others? Doesn't that make you a hypocrite?
Right.
And man, the minute you put that word out there, people get really challenged. I was at a networking group once, right? And I said, okay, guys, I was talking about adaptive growth and data-driven, sales systems and CRMs and everything. And I said, if you took your actions that you do each week and how you manage your sales pipeline and you let someone else do that same thing and you're in charge of paying them and like making sure that they're doing the right things, are you happy with the amount of work and effort and clarity and tracking that they are doing?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was like, well, no. And it's like, okay, so if you're not willing to do that for yourself when you are doing this role now and you expect it of someone else later on, that makes you a hypocrite.
Right.
Like in the nicest way possible, like I don't have any other problem in the world with you. And this word is a little bit loaded for lots of people, but your expectations are yours alone. They're not for anybody else's, right? And if you don't clearly delineate what those expectations are, makes you a bad person to work for, a bad leader, and a bad boss, right? But you can fix that. But when you're running around holding other people to standards that you can't work to, and you're holding them to this thing, and you've never done it, and you wouldn't do it, and it's got to be different for you, and all this stuff like this, you're a hypocrite.
I actually, when I was speaking at not a chamber event, but it was like a local group event, and I actually threw a little hypocrite stuff in there too. It was around, I said, hey, raise your hand if you're a hypocrite. And, like one guy raised his hand like the righteous dude. It's like, yeah, we're all hypocrites, like that one guy. Everyone else like looking at me sideways, like hypocrite. I was like, so who here knows how to market their business? Like well, tomorrow, if you had to do something to market your business, raise your hand if you know something you would do. And they all raise their hand. Yeah, I know something to do. Okay. Did you do it yesterday? Well, we're all hypocrites, right? Like, so it always goes over really well.
I love leading with that as like a frame of like, we're gonna make this word okay because everybody in here is one. Because you know what, I'm one, right? Like at the end of the day, there were things where my intentions don't match up with my actions, and until they do, I can't go around holding anyone else accountable or expecting anything different, right? Like that's just the way that it is, right? So before you're judging somebody else, right? And this is the thing that I'm working on, is trying to be less judgmental, and I'm becoming more judgy of judgy people through this process, right? So it's not perfect. It's still a work in progress. But why? Like, why would you hold somebody else to a standard that you're not capable of, right? Now, especially if that's not like a clearly communicated collaborative goal, right? You're just showing up and expecting, like, this is the core thing that I took away from leadership and self-deception, is that like the minute you view these people as just like minions to go do these things for you, your attitude towards them changes. But when you can still view them as a human with wants and desires and needs and head trash and all of these things that make up all of us, everything shifts, like everything. So
that's why the communication is so important, because communication can solve a lot of that up front, right?
Yeah. So if you're networking and the people you're talking to are just means to an end for like introductions and referrals, and you have to get that from them and stuff, oh man, you got a long road. I'm here to tell you, right? Because the givers in networking never make it through. Good way to lead and get interaction at an event. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, anytime I think you can shock people, it's a good way to start.
I mean, here's the deal. I mean, hooks are probably 60% of the game, right?
If not more. I mean, like
more,
one of the weird things, like each section you talk, like, so I just finished up an email course, right, that we're selling with Kirk, and every section I felt like I was saying, okay, here's the most important thing. Headlines are the most important thing. The first sentence of your email, it's the most important thing, because okay, the close, call to action is the most important thing. I didn't actually say that, but like in my head, I could hear myself saying, okay, this is really important, do it. The hook. I mean, the hook is the thing, because if you can't get them there, really, it's in the ball game.
I heard this line about copy and like content writing rather recently, and I really like this a lot. Each sentence should make the person want to read the next sentence, right? And we forget about that sometimes because we're thinking about like the flow of it and these different like methods of AIDA and pain, stir, agitate, all this stuff. And it's just kind of, you're doing all these things, but it's like, is it really that simple? I just need to write this sentence well enough that you want to read the next one, and I need to write that one well enough you want to read the next one, and then, I think that's powerful.
It is. It is. You know what it also does for me is, because I'm writing a lot of email right now. I'm doing a lot of sales funnel stuff for myself and for Quirk, and I'm just really enjoying learning the writing process again. And I think it forces you to be more simple with your sentences, because you know that you have to, every sentence you have to write it to make the next one seem enticing. It makes you write less, because it's a whole lot of work to write a whole bunch of fluffy words to think, oh, now I've got another sentence to write. So what if I just simplify this one, since I still have another one I have to do a really good job at? It's a weird thing in my head where I'm like, I want to write less now. I just want to make it really sharp, and compelling every time. So it's a great exercise, I think, for communication in general, to go write an email, with a framework. It's like 4 pieces to it, and see how short you can write it. Make it shorter and do it over and over. To me, it makes you think more about your words and what you mean when you say things. That's the big thing, because I think a lot of times when we're communicating, no matter what, it's just writing content or emails or whatever, we're just writing an idea out, and the words are just kind of flowing out, right? We're not really checking them as they come out of our mouth or our fingers, right? Yeah. When you're forced to write something that you know is going to be graded, by data and tested, it's like this concept now. It's like, oh, I have to say what I really mean here. So it's a fun thing.
The other, for so long on LinkedIn, I was just trying to hit 12 to 1300 characters, right? Because that was the max, and that's what I was used to seeing, and everything else like this. I try to get into the avatar's head and write what they are thinking.
Use their language for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things. Good morning, Lindy. One of my favorite things that someone told me is that if you can swap out the verb for goat herder and the line still makes sense, you're not writing with enough intention.
Oh yeah, that's really good. I like that.
I think about that a lot. Like, hey, if I swap the verb out in here, the title of this thing, and put in goat herder, does it still make sense? If so, you're not writing specifically enough, and I really, really like that.
Well, and the next layer of that too is when we talked about my friend Connor, now my bestie up in Vancouver, who's making 15 mil.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, absolutely. Old buddy Connor.
Yeah, good old buddy of 23 hours now.
You guys are. Man, I'm about to be replaced on this show as your Bill.
Oh man, I've already sent him 2 gifts and invited him to my, whatever.
Kid's birthday party.
Yeah, my 43rd. The point of writing about internal and intrinsic versus external stuff. He kind of, one of the things he had said before he left the call is see if you can stop writing about external pain altogether. Just cross that off your list. Don't write about external anymore. He said you still can, but at least then you won't ever be thinking that way. It's like, what's this person really working with? What are they really feeling right now?
Well, that's really interesting, right? Because in all the sales training I've done, it's about looking for the emotion, right? And the more you can get somebody emotional in a sales conversation, the less they are concern to the intellectual, right? Because we're in one of these 2 frames of mind pretty much always. You're emotionally driven, which means that you want the thing that's the best fit for you, or you're intellectually driven, which means that this is just like a math exercise, right? And you're trying to find the best fit based upon a range of metrics, right? And usually that means cheapest price for a lot of people as well. So if you don't get somebody emotional, right, then they're not going to pay the premium to work with you ever, right? And sometimes emotion comes through your branding, right? Like Tony Robbins, right? I'm not a huge fan, but he's kind of like the elephant in the room of a lot of the stuff. His branding and his stuff is so high that people are just emotional whenever he says, "I'm going to be in your city. Do you want to come to my event?" Right? His brand is so strong that it drives that emotion in there. But when you're small and you're brand new, you have to go figure out where that emotion is, because here's the deal. The reason why Tony Robbins and all these guys are successful is not because they're speaking to everybody. It's because they have found the audience who lines up with how they already communicate, right? And sometimes you modify that a little bit, but ideally, I don't think you're stretching too much to be influential in your target market, right? I had this idea the other day I talked to this guy last week, Matt, and he's a fan of the podcast, and we were just talking about sales. Really smart guy. He sold this idea to a company, and they gave him a job as opposed to just like hiring him as a consultant. But now they're not taking any of his advice. And I'm like, man, how do you feel about that? He's like, I hate it because I didn't even really want the job. I just wanted to help them with this thing, and now they put me on the payroll, which is great, which I didn't really want, but they're not taking my advice anymore. I said, how do you feel about that? And he goes, I don't feel okay. And I said, you got to go tell them that. Guys, I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
When we were talking about this, I just pitched you an idea and you guys wanted to hire me. And now we're here. You guys are paying for my expertise, not taking any of it. Makes me feel a little bit bad. How should we handle this going forward? Because I'm not sure that I'm the right guy to be on your payroll.
Yeah.
Right? Like, go have that conversation. It's not challenging. You're not going to piss anybody off. You are really trying to understand what's going on. It's just making that true connection. Yeah, Mike. Guys, I guess I should explain this because like every time I'm trying to read something, I'm like moving around. My camera is right here in front of me, which is right here in front of the monitor, so that way I'm not this guy the whole time.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing this, guys, it's to look around the camera so that way I can see your comment. I think Lindy said something and you put on the screen, but I missed it because I was
interested. She said it was interesting insight.
Oh, so you need to make it emotional, right? And so if you're not hearing words, right, in the realm that I come from, which is Sandler, if you're not hearing fadwaka, right, frustrated, concerned, angry, anything that's got an emotional term to it, you might be dealing with something that is just nice to fix as opposed to something that is fixed. Right. And the nugget for me was that I have to be okay, like exploring those feelings in myself and in conversations, because I was kind of running away from that because I wanted to make it about ROI. I wanted to make it about money or the impact of it and stuff like this. And so I would focus on that stuff as opposed to like, how do you feel about it? Well, I hate it. Okay. Could you tell me more about why you hate that?
Right.
Why is it a big deal? A lot of people don't even care about this at all, but I'm curious, why is it a big deal to you? Right then and right there, I'm going deeper than any other salesperson is because I'm asking more questions because the need to understand is more important than I need to sell you something, right?
Yeah, and I think the concept's always, really important that you're making the emotional connection. Good morning, Michelle.
Morning, Michelle.
But I think the more volume comes into a market space, the even more important it is, because what happens is not only is it harder to stand out, you actually look in more stark contrast because there's more people doing it wrong. So you actually stick out in a good way when you can write that way, when you can talk that way on camera, when you can, look at all these LinkedIn influencers that have come up in the last couple of years. Most of them, I would say, 95% of them have done a really good job of connecting emotionally with their audience via video. That's been the big connection. Now, there's all sorts of different ways they do it, right? We could go on a long diatribe about the different formats that they make that happen in, but I really feel like the ones that have stuck and they make it like, look at you, like one of the guys that you really like, and me too, he's an amazing dude, Quentin Q. That's exactly what he does. He connects emotionally with the people that he's trying to do business with by sharing a lot of his own feelings about things that he's struggled with, but he's doing that because he's smart and he knows the people he's trying to connect with have those same feelings, they have the same issues. Or if they don't, they can connect with him, authenticity and genuine. But there's a line there between, hey, I want to share my whole life and just be someone who dishes, versus I struggle with this, so this happened, so now I'm doing this. Like that's a formula. That's a way to create a message that connects you with people, because there's two ways you can connect with emotion in marketing. I think it's, here's where I've been and here's how I felt. Oh, okay, you're a human. I can feel you on that. Or, hey, how do you feel? Why do you feel that way? You feel emotion. I felt that way too. Or, oh, I understand. Let's connect on that. Right? So you can dish from both sides, I think. So here's the John eyes. Here it comes.
I'm wondering if my writing isn't at the level that I want it to be at as far as like impact and stuff like this, because like I don't think I'm a great writer. Like I think I can get good ideas down, but I don't think I'm a great writer. I don't really think that I'm great at like getting something that's like good to great. Like I'm much more of the idea guy. Okay. And I'm wondering if the reason, or part of that reason, is because I have been uncomfortable talking about feelings and emotions and stuff like that of mine in my writing. Because, back at the bank, you and I always talked about James Altucher.
Yeah.
Morning, Nicole. And James Altucher is this blogger. He's written a couple of books, but I just felt like every time I was, and this became a joke between Jeff and I, that every time I was reading one of his things, it was just another rendition of like, I had lost it all. I was down to my last penny. And then I somehow like managed to bring it back. And I know that everybody loves a victory story, right? But I also think that you could overdo it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
To like a point of it being dramatized, right? Because like there's struggles, right? Like I didn't want to get up this morning, like at all. Like the bed was incredibly comfortable. I'm going to the zoo today and like getting up at like 6 a.m. so that way I could do some writing, so that way I felt good and not have to pay Nazis, later on today. Like didn't really seem like a big deal, but I'm here, the writing is 3/4 of the way done. So like there's struggle in everything, right? So sometimes it bothers me whenever people try to make a big deal about their struggles.
Well, I think the difference though is as a mature versus an immature writer. It's not that. I think what you're talking about is someone who's found a bit and they're just writing it into the ground, right? Versus someone who actually, you can literally. This is why I think writing's so amazing. Is you can find a framework like that works, and there's lots of them out there you can go get for free or buy frameworks that absolutely work. But the difference is the person who's invested in the writing, or blogs, videos do the same thing, right? They mature with the person, so the formula might not change, but the struggle and the story change along with the person's life and the season of business that they're in, and the really good ones make sure that it ties back to something that's a solution for the client. Because I think where a lot of people miss is go, okay, here's the formula, here's the emotion I'm going to connect to my people today. And that's just someone who can get followers. Connect with a bunch of people through sharing. You have followers, but you don't have customers. The ones who really understand it then turn around and find a way to connect that into a reason to work with them, a solution that's on the other side. I think that's the main difference. And so I think you're talking about two things. One is like there's a formula that gets old if you don't change up the content inside of it. Okay, well, just change the content to match the season of your life and it won't get old. But the second part of it is okay, now you actually have to connect this into something that's valuable to a customer. And that's where that like professional comes in and goes, look, here's the connector point to that. And I think, you said earlier that there's the two types of buyers. The longer I go, the more I believe that everyone buys on emotion. Some people weigh a lot more heavily on the backside once they've connected emotionally to the data, right? And that's kind of what we talk about. They want to see all the features and the benefits and the price points and comparisons and the da-da-da. And the other people, I just like John. He just seems like someone I want to work with. So I'm going to work with John. Don't take any of the benefits.
Nobody says that.
I'm speaking right there. But yeah, everyone has the emotional connection. It's just
so then that makes me wonder if I get right, because you see all of this stuff. Who's the guy on LinkedIn from Banff Media? Josh Fletcher, I think is his name. Yeah, he does that as well. I was fired and all this stuff. And maybe I'm now wondering how big of a deal I'm making about this just because of my personality, because I don't love feelings. Like, they tend to get in the way. They tend to slow you down, right? And all these things. So maybe this bothers me, but it wouldn't bother anybody else. And I should just get the hell over it and just start like sharing my story, because I've made every mistake that I thought I was going to be too smart to make, right, in the past 2 years, like literally every one. And I've done this before, guys, right? Like I had a business partner and we launched a website design company and we ran it for 3.5 years and he's still running it and I just stepped away. And so I saw all that and I got really cocky and I was like, oh, this is going to be excellent. And nothing has gone according to plan. Like, literally nothing. But the other part of that is the plan was not loosely or was not really built. I was just chasing like a revenue number, right? And so I wasn't doing a good job of like managing like my KPIs and stuff like that, or my KPIs were not structured to get me to my goals is what is what it really was, and that's why we're doing this.
Yeah. Well, I think the important part is that you said there is that you have made mistakes that would be important to, and would connect you to people that need your service because you've been there. And that's important to share those, because that's how you connect. Well, if you talked about like, and this is a personality thing, I think this is one of those differences where like you could have two John Hills in the world, and one version would connect with this crowd and one version would connect with this crowd, and then we'd both be fine, right? It's just what you choose to share. I think the difference becomes, and this to me is what authenticity means, is I'm going to share the things that I think would absolutely connect and help someone today. That's the amount of authenticity I'm going to bring today. And then the boldness, I'm going to share something that I'm really uncomfortable sharing, but I think it's actually going to help somebody. I'm not just doing this to be melodramatic. This is something I know someone out there needs to hear, and I'm going to share it, and it's going to hurt, and I'm going to feel really uncomfortable, but this is going to help me help someone who's in my audience who I want to help with business. Mm-hmm. But it's a personal thing, maybe, I think that's where the line goes. Otherwise, you're just sharing to share.
For sure. Right. And I think for a long time I was sharing just to share. Right.
And I think.
Yeah. I feel like in the past 2 to 3 months, I've been more real in my content and in the things I talk about than I have been in the past.
Well, I told you your value posts were getting really good. Like I thought that I could see the improvement level. I think I told you when I was at your house and you were like, they're all right.
Yeah, because they don't really feel any different to me. So I like that's how I measure everything is by the indicators, right? So the writing before and the writing now, right? I mean, because like here's the deal, like I'm also discounting the avalanche effect of just being present and being consistent, and all this stuff, right? Because it could be argued that if I was writing with this level of intention 2 years ago, I would be here. I'd be where I am now 2 years ago, as opposed to like kind of hitting it straight now. So there is something I'm willing, like blatantly discounting in that, but I don't really feel like it's so weird because like I'm connected with a lot of people who write copy, and I love the art of copy. Like you could have a black and white website that, as long as the copy is really good, nothing else matters, guys. Like you can have the stockest and cheesiest of stock photos and no photos at all, but if it's really relevant and you're delivering value of some shape or form to the people who are meant to be reading it, they will read it. So don't worry about trying to make everything easily digestible. Focus on making it incredibly relevant, because that takes all the pressure off of like everything else. No one cares about your design when the content is really good. Right. And so I know all this, right. And I love to write, right. I love like putting ideas on paper and writing and stuff like this, but I just don't think I'm very good at being persuasive in my writing, which, is just a skill set I can work on.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think maybe I should go work on this idea of like why I'm so concerned about, the feelings in writing, right? Because my thing is I just don't like it when it's overdone, but in this world of, like social media, maybe that's the issue. Oh, dip.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. Okay. So
I have a thought, but I want you to finish that one.
So bear with me, right?
Yeah.
So in the brunsonbook.com secrets, which is around here somewhere because I've been reading it, it talks about the idea of like the attractive character, right? The person who has gone through these things that, is now, in a position of authority to like help others out. It talks about their epiphany bridge and their struggle and stuff like that. And when you look at Tim Ferriss and Noah Kagan and Joe Rogan and these people who have done a really good job of this, their stories, their pyramid is only built on a couple of like stories that they have told so many times that it's now this thing that you're okay with, right? Like Noah Kagan was number 40 at Facebook, number something at Mint, right? He's left both of those things, and now he started AppSumo just on a whim. Like I know that story so well because I've been following him for so long, and I think that my thing with Altucher is that, and people like that, is that the woe is me thing is so widely spread that it's just that it hits me as being unrealistic.
Yeah, and Altusher puts out a mega amount of content too, so it's also a volume thing. But you're hearing that message a whole lot, and I think that's partially his personality. What I get from him is he's pretty dramatic. Like he does stand up comedy, but it's like very dark. He does he likes to be out there telling drama. Like I feel like that's I think that probably reflects his personality as much as anything else. But you're right, same story too. That's what kind of kills it. I don't know. There's just this. I would also say that there's this when we connect with a story, it doesn't become as annoying. We could hear it 100 times versus a guy telling the same story twice. Like your in-laws come to mind, and you don't particularly love your in-laws or something, and they tell this story every time you get together, and you're like, oh my God, they always tell that story. Versus I get together with John and I hear a kung fu story, I'm like, oh yeah, here comes the good part. This one right here, this happens. Yeah.
Don't make it out to be like I'm like some like old war hero.
No, right? we all do it. My dad used to say, "Don't get new jokes, get new audiences." Right? Just find your good ones. And
I like that. I like that.
I think it's the same thing because it's 1,000 loyal fans, right? The people that love you connect with you and they love your stories and they're going to stick around. Everyone else is just going to rotate through, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
So Lindy, tell me, Lindy's on here, I think. How many times have I told a similar story in the 30-day group? She's been there since the beginning. How many times have I retold a story? Comment if you raise your hand or something, because I guarantee I've told at least 1 or 2 stories 5 or 6 times because I'm rotating through different people through the group, but the ones that stick around have to hear my same stuff. It's like,
well, that's fair, right? In a lot of my coaching, it's very like anecdotal, right? And I am aware of some of these like known issues and stuff, and I've always got a story about it, right? So, real quick, can we change subjects and talk about the deal I lost yesterday?
I guess this was so good.
I know. I mean, we can stay here. It's totally fine, but I think that this is helpful. So, hi.
Okay.
You want to get on camera? No. Okay. Melissa does not want to be on camera. Everybody. Jake says hello.
Hi, Jake.
So this guy who is a good friend of mine brought me in because he's working with a guy and they're looking for someone to help with the stuff that I help with, right? Like sales processes and, reinforcement training and practice groups and everything else like this. And so, I thought I had this thing like in the bag because my internal champion also thought that we had this thing in the bag, And so the thing was, so this guy is operating in a COO capacity, right? Chief Operating Officer.
Interesting.
Right. So not just some entry level person, right?
Why is he handling sales processes?
Because it's part of operations for this company. Like it is a major part of what.
It was the right person to talk to then.
Yeah, it was for sure. Mm-hmm.
Right. Go ahead.
And so we have a conversation. We have another conversation, and then come to find out yesterday that like the deal isn't going through, right? And I'm kind of bummed, right? Because I know that this has a potential of happening, right? And I'm kind of frustrated because like I think that I could do this job really well. They decided to work with someone else. So while I'm happy that they're taking action at all, because a lot of people don't, it is frustrating because I think I could do a better job than this person could. So, but the thing that I'm frustrated about really honestly is like, I know this is a thing, right? Like I know that you can willingly jump and put yourself into a spot to where you're selling through a conduit, right? The internal champion into a company. And it's impossible to get the concerns and pains and, all the stuff that the actual decision maker was. And here's the deal. My friend, whenever we were kind of like breaking this thing down yesterday and kind of talking about it, he didn't even realize that he was putting himself into kind of like a gatekeeperish spot that like he couldn't make the final decision. So make sure you are talking to the person who can make the decision, right? Not someone who thinks that they can make the decision. Figure out how the decision process gets made. And I had asked, I said, hey, Like, how does this get made? And he was like, well, I have the okay to do it. I just want you to meet him. And then we should be good to go. And then after we chatted a couple times, he was like, yeah, we're good to go. This is what the budget looks like. I said, awesome. Like, that budget works for me. But then by that very default, the guy that I lost to is cheaper than I am. Right. Yeah. So had I been able to talk with the CEO, right, like the actual guy who's making the decision, the final decision maker, I could have qualified around that and maybe worked out some deal at like a lower price point in the beginning with some performance indicators and milestone deliveries and stuff like that that got me to the level that I feel that I'm worth.
Right.
But because I'm working through an intermediary, right, a lot of that stuff falls away. Right. I didn't really have an opportunity to talk about like what the budget really was. I was just kind of taking it from this guy. And this happens to consultants all the time, right? So make sure that you are talking to the person who can make a yes or no decision, because you might be talking to someone who thinks that they can, but you need to go deep into that conversation, right? So you're telling me that if you wanted to right now, you could pull the trigger? Well, no, I got to talk to someone else. Okay, what do you think they're going to ask you when you go to them and say, hey, I want to do this? Mm-hmm. Right? Because you might not be able to get them on the phone, right? Which is a thing that happens, right? Depending upon how they make their buying decisions. But you can at least hopefully prepare this person to go answer those kinds of hard questions by giving them a dry run. Right. That's super important. And, there's things. What's that?
Was this guy a friend of yours?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did that blind you maybe a little bit?
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, this is something that it's for as skeptical as I am, I want to take people at their word when they say that they can make the decision, right? Because it's also quite challenging to be like, really? Are you sure you can make the decision? And stuff like that. So while I feel like I do a decent job the majority of the time of like ferreting that out, but it's easier in small business because you're talking with the decision maker, right? But like when you get up a level and there's levels and hierarchies and stuff like that, you really want to make sure that you're talking to the person who can tell you yes, who can be like, yeah, let's go get that.
In the agency, because we always worked with big teams like this. We and Claire Brunner, she's out there. What's up, Claire? Good to connect the other day.
You did connect with her the other day.
Yeah, she followed me on Instagram, so we chat on occasion in text on Instagram and things like that.
Okay.
But no, I didn't ever talk to her in person or anything. But anyway, Claire was really, really, really good at having that conversation up front and getting me in touch with the person to close around the marketing stuff. And one of the things that I would watch her do on occasion, she would say, hey, great. So we want to make sure and get all the correct information laid out in a way that's really presentable for you guys. Talk me through the decision process. Who's involved in that? And then so make it really non-threatening. And like, okay, great. There's that. And there's that. Okay, what question is that person going to ask of you? Okay. And then like, so you have this budget. Do they sign off on the budget? So like she would like backdoor, like be asking these questions. And when the thing ended, she was so good at that. And that's something that I never really told her that I really admired that she did really well was she found those people and did it in such a non-threatening way that we always were talking to the decision maker. She would walk away from conversations if she wasn't talking to the decision maker. Like just give up. She's like, it's not worth our time.
That's the level that you have to be at. But here's the really important part. My buddy thought he was the decision maker. Like he thought like at all levels that this was going to be good to go, that he was just going to go to the CEO and be like, hey, John's the guy, let's hire him at this rate and stuff like this. Right. And like, he literally thought that that's how it was going to go down. And so it does happen, right? Yeah. Everybody thinks that they've got more authority than they actually do. Right. Like everyone wants to drive 80 until the cop light's like, burp, and then it's like, oh, dang, I was speeding. Right. Right. But this happens in business all the time. Now, you just have to be vigilant, right? Like looking for it and intentional about like, OK, how do you make this decision? Do you think you're just going to like walk in? Part of this is being out of practice and this being kind of different than my normal sale. right? It was kind of like, cool, like this sounds interesting and it's different than what I'm normally doing. So the thing is I'm a little bit rusty of selling to somebody where there's a CEO and a COO and a sales team, right? Because the people that I've been talking with are individual producers and really, intelligent consultants who just don't want to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, let me help you build a sales system that alleviates the parts that you hate. And that way you just do the things that you're strong at.
Right.
And that way you don't ever have to feel like a slimy salesperson ever again.
Right.
Right. But that's happening at like a, much, much smaller level. Right. So it was rust, but this is something to be aware of because my guy, right, who I have spent a lot of time talking with, not as much as Jake, because I haven't known him as long, but for the period I've known him, about as often as Jake and I chat, I mean, almost daily.
Yeah.
And he knows my stuff like really, really well. And when we talked about this on the call, he had a moment of saying, oh shit, I ruined this for you.
Oh,
and
really?
I said, now wait a minute. Yeah. Well, we kind of both had this like awareness of like, how would we do this again? Right. And this is why post-call debriefs are so important, right? Look for the one question you should have asked that you didn't get to ask, because that means you get to ask it next time. It's really hard to be perfect in the moment. Yeah. It's totally okay to realize like, hey, I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm not going to make these mistakes again.
Well, and I'm going to pump up what you're always preaching is practice, because, in a game of tennis, your job is not to think about performing. When it's time to go, you take off your brain and you let the habits kick in and you do your very best, because you're actually going to do worse if you're thinking about what you should be doing in the moment. Just do it. Just do the thing. And then, like you said, the post-call, that's why it's so important. Then you can go back and practice in those moments when you're not performing.
Yeah. So we're breaking this thing down, and I was like, well, here's the deal. And I was like, how'd you come up with the number? And he was like, well, I went and said that I think this works. And he said that was okay. And so I came back and told you. And I was like, well, who'd they end up going with? And he tells me, and I said, okay, what's the price point? And he tells me, and I was like, you see what happened here, right? And he was like, well, no, I don't think I did. And I was like, because you know him and you know me, you put yourself into a position between us, as opposed to maybe just saying, hey, let me get out of the way and let you guys talk through this. And he had that moment of like, oh, dang, I essentially gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And it's like not really a gatekeeper, but like, this is where the internal champion stuff doesn't always work out the way that you want it to, because you're putting too much focus on this one relationship as opposed to the one you need to be. Right.
And actually, is it when I've done deals with people before, and only because I got burned like this too, it became like hey, you're my internal champion. This is awesome. Who can you hand me to? Like that's what it became for me. That's what I do now. Actually, is when someone's like, hey, I can get you in here. I'm like, great, introduce me. Like I don't even bother like talking to my friends anymore. Like, great, go tell them how awesome I am and introduce me.
Well, this is really funny because Sean Overton, who you introduced me to originally, I believe, super cool guy, jiu-jitsu guy, just got his blue belt. Congratulations, buddy. And so he sent me an email with just like some copy in there of what someone was looking for, and said, hey, is this a good lead for you? And I was like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then he sends me a screenshot of the guy where the copy like comes from, and I kind of had this moment of like you couldn't. And here's the deal: there's a lot I don't know about the situation, right? So it might be one of these like Bark or kind of like consulting aggregator sites or whatever, and he might not actually have a relationship with the guy, and it's just as easy for me to go in there cold. But like my default is like, let's do an email handoff, right? Yeah. Group email, so that way I can run my game and I don't have to come hassle you to run your game. Right. So just say this, and would you like a template about how I like to be introduced? Yeah. Just make it really, really easy. You can copy and paste if you want. So it's that stuff, right? So, my chances of being able to have a conversation with this guy are maybe lower, but sometimes you got to work with what you have. And then sometimes it's about setting the expectation in the future. Hey, right, in the future, when you think of someone who could use my services, could you just do an email introduction between the three of us? And that way I can follow up and do the things that I need to do without having to get you involved. Everybody wants that, right? But they're just not thinking about it in the moment when they're like, oh, you know who you should talk to? So yeah, I've
actually got at the end of my 30-day group an email that say, who else do you know that might get some value out of this group? And then I say, here's an email below that you can use. I've written for you, so it kind of gives you the main points. Feel free to use it. Write it yourself if you want. Here's an email. Just copy paste this if you want to make it really easy for you. And I've had some good feedback on that, saying, "Hey, this is an awesome idea." So it's somebody to make it super easy for people to recommend you.
It's so funny because there's these things that like I've thought about and I'm like, that'll never work, and then I try it and it does work. Like whenever Calendly was like first hitting the scene and we were starting to use it, Jeff was like, dude, this is such big time BS. Like,
really?
like no one's, he was not a fan at all. And I was like, I'm just going to try it. And man, some people didn't schedule for sure, right? I mean, no one gets like, because like those emails get lost and stuff like this. But when I don't have to do the 6 additional emails, how about Tuesday? Tuesday doesn't work. How about Thursday? Okay, I can do Thursday at 1. I can do Thursday at 3. Okay, how about Thursday at 2? Let me send you the invite. That is a lot of emailing back and forth to get one meeting on the books.
Right.
So I started using a scheduler, and I would rather deal without the 8 follow-up emails or 6 or 8 or whatever it is, to get something scheduled and deal with like a loss of booking. And so then what happens is that the templates, right? Like I was like, man, these people don't know how to introduce me, so I should just like tell them how, right? And then I was like, that's a little pretentious, and everything else like this. And I was like, but wait a minute, like people are really busy, right? And I know that I sometimes struggle coming up with like a craftily worded sentence to introduce someone who I think is cool, but somewhat new and I don't know them super well.
Right.
So let me just make it as easy as possible. Right. And now whenever I'm networking with someone and we're talking about like referring each other and stuff like this, I'm like, hey, would you like a couple of templates about how people like to introduce me? Mm-hmm. Right. So that way you don't have to come up with it on the spot or go do a bunch of research.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, everybody.
Especially when you frame it that way, it's convenient. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And I have had a couple of people tell me like, "Oh, I'm getting big time by Jake. He's put me through his Calendly link, blah blah blah." And I'm like,
"Really?
Yeah." I mean, I think
I've never had anybody get mad at me.
Maybe, but like, I'm like, "Well, do you want to do 6 emails back and forth, like to see?" And they're like, "Oh, good point."
I think it's also about how you frame it, right? Because I'm very intentional about like how I frame it. Of like, hey, I'm available on Tuesday between this and this time, but if you're not available then, please find some time that works for you here. I found that this makes it easier to get things scheduled with less email.
Me too.
No one has ever had anything bad.
I think probably it's part of my problem because I used to just be like, hey, try to find time here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now I don't do it that way. So, me.
So let's talk about our bill bets for next week. What do you got?
So it's 10 a day off that list. 10 a day, 10 asks.
I like it.
So that's
I like it.
And it's definitely a $500 bet. It's got to be. I'm thinking maybe something different, even something bigger or something. I don't know. I've been thinking about how we can really amp up our bet stakes in a way that doesn't necessarily tie to money directly. Like, how can we? I keep going back to I think I told the story last week of the guy that started a nonprofit with his roommate. Yeah. Like, here's the pink slip to my car. If this does not happen this month, you own my car. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to do it.
Crazy bet that I would love that would make me, I think would motivate you to make sure that you didn't mess up and would, if you lose, I think would be awesome. Okay. If you don't do this week, you have to grow your hair out for a month.
Oh. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah? Is that a good one?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It would look terrible.
Here's the deal. I said the same thing about the beard, and not everybody agrees with me.
Yeah, but I don't know what's going to happen. I've got the bowl going on here.
I mean, so here's the deal. You're in control of that, right? So which sucks more? Doing the 10
stop the anxiety. I know I'm going to get it done now, but okay, that's it. I'm going to grow my hair for a month.
I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good idea. That makes me wonder how long you've been thinking about that, because that came out pretty quick.
Well, man, the glistening dome that I look at every morning
Makes it pretty simple. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, it draws a lot of attention.
Yeah, I got the shine on for sure. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Maybe I have to wear a hat, huh? So that's blind people.
Well, the hair is so long now that like it's just kind of it every hair is in an individual race away from my scalp, right?
Some of them like you. They curl back. It's like they're coming back home.
Sometimes, right? You know, they've all got I don't know. That was gonna be funnier in my head, but it trailed off and it wasn't. Thinking about it. I was gonna say something about like empty nest syndrome, but that doesn't really work, and my hair just looks like a nest. So bit of a stretch. There we go.
Okay, what about you? What's your
so next week I got to get this closer ready to start taking calls. So there's gonna be kind of like some like in-depth, longer sessions and lots of practice and stuff. So my focus next week is really to spend time doing that with him, because we need to get him on this funnel and the offer probably the week after that. So I'm probably going to be putting 8 to 10 hours next week into working with him, getting him ready, shoring up these systems and stuff like that. So I'm going to do all my non-negotiables, right? The daily value post, the Sherpa, and all that stuff. My gratitude post, the role play groups, and the office hours. But I think other than that, the biggest goal is just making sure that this guy's like ready to go, and maybe one section or two of like course content. So
here's the question of questions is it's absolutely necessary because you have to do it to get the job done. Does it move you towards your 12-week goal?
Well, so here's the deal, right? Like this becomes, this is where the balance of things that comes into play once again, right? Because this is the work, right? Like this is what I do for people, right? As I help them do these things, right? So this is kind of like part and parcel of like my effort and what I do. So it doesn't actually move me closer towards my BIL bet, or towards my 12-week goal in any other instance other than the fact that I get to do a really good job for this person, and I'm gonna get a testimonial, and what happens is that once this person is placed, then there's opportunities to continue the relationship at like a different price point and stuff like this. So
I think my question more revolves around then, should our BIL bets always be connected directly to our 12-week goal?
No, I don't think so, because I think that some weeks you're like, because I'm excited to do this work with this guy, it's going to take up a lot of time, and I don't want to I don't want to put a bunch of like BIL bet stuff on my plate and then feel like this like dichotomy of like, okay, I need to do good for my client and I also need to do good for myself, right? Sometimes doing good for your client is part and parcel of doing good for yourself, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because which is going to have the bigger impact on my business like later on, right? If I don't deliver for this client and this closer is not ready to go, right, and the systems and processes aren't fully like done, that's a way bigger step back than if I prioritize that and get it done. So I don't think it always has to move. Right. So my BIL bet is going to be light because my work week is going to be heavy.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with it. And I think I do want you to hold me to that standard. I think every week I want my BIL bet to be tied to my 12-week goal somehow, because I'll just make the BIL bet lighter on the weeks that I have heavy work. Right.
Exactly. Right. So my BIL bet is to get this like course done, right, and finally like launched, because it's been this ongoing project and starts and stops and lack of clarity and all this stuff. But like I finally feel like I've got all that stuff cleared and figured out, and now it's just I need to do it and do it consistently. So my BIL bet each week is going to be something around that course until it is done, because I need to get it done and out there.
I think that makes sense. So the BIL bet's a smaller BIL bet, but I think the bet itself should be around the course, because that's what's going to grow. Like you absolutely have to do the work. I think that's where we were talking the last couple of weeks is like, should we be betting on the work? Because the work's the work. And some weeks you have a ton, some weeks you have less. Yeah.
It's all about what you can do with the time. Right. Yeah. So like my time next week is going to be less because of the time I need to put in with this new closer. Right. I'm happy to do it, but that means that my project time for other projects is going to go away. And this is why planning is so important, guys, because what we're what, 3 weeks in, three weeks into the new quarter, and like stuff gets in the way. Stuff very much gets in the way. So plan ahead so that way you can be set up for success for sure.
Yeah, that's where I think the vacuum time.
Yeah.
You were telling me, so I have this real estate
business.
startup thing. It's not a business yet. It's an idea with a framework with some parts moving. John was telling me that's why you have to make sure that every week you put a little bit of progress into each of the projects that you've got going on. Otherwise, they drop. Because I was telling John, I've kind of dropped the ball on this one. Remove the word kinda. I've dropped the ball on this one and have not done activity on it recently, and so now it's kind of stalled out. And so that's where I'm like right here with you. I'm kind of thinking it back at you. It's like, okay, but you still got to keep putting a little bit, even if it's an hour.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This week,
mm-hmm.
It's an hour. That's cool.
What if we shift our BIL bets to time-based metrics? What do you think about that? So right. So if is that a thing? Hold on. Okay, I'm thinking out loud. This is half formed. I try to not do this like in front of lots of people. But what if the idea is, okay, cool, I'm going to spend a week doing this thing. The next week is about documenting that thing. The week after that is giving that thing to somebody else. And then the next week is doing a new thing so that way you can figure it out and all this stuff. And the week after that is documenting that thing. The week after that is giving it to somebody else, right? So what if, right? Because then over 12 weeks, right? If that's the thing, right? 1 week of doing, 1 week of documenting, 1 week of handing it off to somebody else. That means you can put 4 things through like a 12-week process, really get them dialed, figured out, document the crap out of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Using Loom and these different tools, then finding a VA to do it, and then on to the next thing.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, why don't we talk about making that the framework for our BIL bet for the 12-week and for each week? Because everything's not going to be able to fit in that framework necessarily, because obviously, like, we can't outsource everything. We can't. But we can definitely do and document the first 2 pieces of that. Like create, document, launch sort of thing. Yeah, I like that. I think that's a really nice way
I like
to keep
that idea.
tabs, because of course you have better KPIs on that, so that's why it came out of John's mouth.
Well, because if you do it for a week and then you do it again the next week to like document it, and especially if you're doing something like Loom, then what you could do is like each week, cool, this week I'm going to spend 5 hours finding something that doesn't need to be on my plate, and I'm going to do it this week. So Monday becomes like, I'm going to go find something to like give to somebody else, right? Or something that I don't do or I don't do a good job at. So let me do a week of doing it and like kind of capture like how much time this actually takes for me to do it, and then document it the next week and confirm that it takes the same amount of time. And then that third week, it's like, cool, this is how long this has taken me. The expectation is that it shouldn't be that much longer because you've got the documentation and the videos to do the same thing.
Right.
Let's go do it, and hopefully you can do it better than me.
Right. Yeah. Love it. Genius.
I think that's really interesting.
Step through those, ones that don't exactly fit that model when we get to them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
I like that a lot.
Right. Cool. Well, I think that's it then, right? We're all set.
Yeah.
All right.
I gotta go finish this course thing, and I gotta write my Sherpa, and then I'm done. And then it's zoo time.
Awesome, man. Love it. Well, have a fun day at the zoo. I said hey, and yeah, dude. Enjoy your Friday.
Thanks, Bill. I will. You do the same.
All right.
All right, man. See ya.